Hi, everybody! Welcome to the Badger Cave, and today's topic is, how do I pronounce this? Jian Ghomeshi?
Jian Ghomeshi, yeah.
Yeah, the curious case of Jian Ghomeshi. That's what I'm going to call it.
Yeah, it is quite the curious case, for sure. So.
Oh, indeed. Oh, indeed.
Just a little bit of background. There were some allegations that were made about his sexual proclivities, and some of them being violent and non-consensual. He is not just a popular radio show host. He hosted the flagship radio program on CBC Radio for some like 8 years, and was extremely popular among progressives and feminists and all of those people. So these allegations are quite shocking and very scandalous and horrible. So we thought we would just have a little bit of a chat about this whole thing. Rachel has a prepared piece that she's going to read. I have my own. Which one of us wants to go first?
I guess I'll go first. Oh gosh, do you have the show notes page? There was another thing we had an email sent to us, and I'll have to go dig out of Dropbox. But other than that, I think we're prepared. I will read my piece here. The curious case of Jian Ghomeshi. Jian Ghomeshi, a former broadcaster and host of the Canadian radio show Q, is now in the middle of a messy sex scandal. 11 women in all and 1 man have brought forth allegations of sexual misconduct. The thing that makes this notable is that Ghomeshi doesn't fit the usual narrative. He's Iranian, feminist, and liberal. He even minored in gender studies while in university. He's been described as an open-minded, progressive individual. He carries a teddy bear as a travel companion to deal with generalized anxiety disorder. Hardly the type of person you'd expect to strangle a woman. However, this is where the conversation devolves into a matter of he said, she said. On the side of the alleged victims, Jian Ghomeshi is a shameless batterer of women. However, Ghomeshi tells a different story. He describes exiting what he felt was a relationship that was going nowhere, a few months prior to the allegations of abuse. He tells a tale of a jealous ex who wasn't ready to move on, and was upset to see him with other women. Jian Ghomeshi was also fond of BDSM, but his descriptions of the practice are a far cry from the allegations that he slapped a woman several times before choking her. Ghomeshi describes how there were lengthy conversations before these sessions describing what would happen, safe words, and how he checked at various times to assess how comfortable his partner was. These are vastly different stories. One side paints Ghomeshi as a monster, and the other an innocent man with a jealous ex hungry for revenge. Whether or not the former story has any weight, it's the version of events pushed through the media. Is Jian Ghomeshi a monster? It doesn't matter, because he already is in the minds of feminists. While the formal investigation has barely begun, feminists and pretty much everyone else is convinced of his guilt. He's currently filing a suit against the CBC for wrongfully firing him, and says that he intends to fight the charges. And so there we go. I guess we can take it away from there.
All right. I'm just going to turn my camera back on.
I will turn mine off because it'll help run this.
All right. And this is a piece that I wrote, an open letter to Ghomeshi just after he got fired, and he had just posted a long post on Facebook telling what he claimed to be his side of the story. I think that was a preemptive strike. It was a wise move, but there you go. Here we go. Dear Jian Ghomeshi, I have never liked your show. The primary reason I have always found you insufferable is because you have consistently pandered to feminism. You softball any feminist guest, hell. You tend to not just softball, but softball slow and wide and soggy enough to give them a walk every damn time, instead of ever asking them any difficult questions or demanding they provide empirical evidence for their assertions. And while I know that asking the really hard questions isn't what the Q, that's his show, is about, I have no doubt that had you ever interviewed me, you'd have been asking those hard questions. You'd have been demanding I prove every single claim I made. You do it the way every mainstream interviewer, whether on the political left or the political right, who has dared to talk to me has. You have been told all your life that the rape of women is not taken seriously enough, even in Western cultures, that women who claim they've been sexually violated are not believed, and even when they are believed, they're blamed or dismissed. You've been told that we live in a rape culture where the sexual terrorizing of women is normalized, and men are absolved through the toxically masculine boys will be boys. You have implicitly agreed with that every time you've swallowed any given feminist assertion at face value instead of telling that person to prove it to you and to everyone. You are now reaping what a feminist culture sows. What it sows is an assumption of sexual malice and malfeasance on the part of all men, and the attitude, to paraphrase Alan Dershowitz, that rape is so heinous a crime, even innocence is not a defense. You said yourself the CBC doesn't give two shits about whether what you did with your partner was consensual. It's only concerned with the fact that some women have impugned your sexuality and your integrity. Some woman somewhere says Jian Ghomeshi is a creep. Here comes your pink slip. I've been surfing on mainstream websites, and the goss is that you're a scumbag and a predator, all based on a single blog post about an alleged ass grab written by a female writer that erotica wouldn't lower themselves to publishing, a story so cloying and saturated with rape fantasy narrative that I'd be surprised the author doesn't masturbate to it every night before bed. I have to say, Jian, I am not happy with you. I'm really not. You have contributed to a culture where a woman's pointed finger is equivalent to a conviction. A culture Theodore Roosevelt predicted would eventually emerge all the way back in 1904, a future dystopia where any man so much as accused of rape would be as subject to public lynching as the black man was in his own day. You have consistently and repeatedly enabled the architects of your own undoing, almost certainly thinking they would never ever turn on you, and almost certainly thinking no man was ever accused of sexual misconduct who didn't deserve it. You are willing to believe the worst of every man who was not you, an entire society of them, while simultaneously believing that playing by the feminist rule book would somehow inoculate you against persecution. I am a public figure who has spoken at political conventions and gender issues conferences, an advocate for men and boys, and a philosophical opponent of ideological feminism. I am a high school graduate whose writings are currently included in the curricula of more than one university sociology or psychology class. I am a waitress who is a friend of Warren Farrell, best-selling author of several books on the male experience, and Ann Cools, the first black female to become a senator in North America, and a leading opponent of ideological feminism. I am unusual in background, atypical in my opinions and my associates, not your average Jane. People like me have been out here all this time. For the 8 years you have hosted your show, and yet not once have you found any of us interesting enough to interview, not when there's another rape culture hysteric to pander to for lulz and listens anyway. I find you smarmy, self-satisfied, repugnant, and unctuous in your 8 years of asking easy questions and avoiding controversy. I detest your smug interview style, your moralizing, pre-recorded intros to the show, and your lack of journalistic integrity when presenting the status quo as truth by journalistic fiat. But as much as I detest the way you've enabled and abetted what I have come to believe are the most insidious organized fraudsters in living memory, I detest even more the way you have been treated by them, by your employer, and by the general public. Again, I don't like you, and I don't like what you have stood for over my years of listening to your program, but that does not mean I will automatically believe what is being said about you, and given the propensity for feminists to lie about men and about sex, I want to offer you my support, such as it is. I wish you well in your lawsuit. If it turns out you are a scumbag, as many prominent male feminists somehow magically turn out to be, almost as if they view feminism as a means to groom their victims, I will condemn you as wholeheartedly as anyone else. But until the evidence surfaces to convince me of that, I will be in your corner. Good luck to you, and here's hoping all the evidence is heard.
Wow. Well, I don't know much about this guy. I do remember watching Q. Well, not watching, sorry, listening to an episode of Q. It was the one. It was the debate on rape culture, and I remember he got so much crap for that. Apparently, having somebody who actually didn't believe in rape culture on the show at all, somebody with an opposing viewpoint. They really wanted just, you know, people who had different were on the same page about it, arguing over, I don't know. Really, really upset. Basically was, oh, jeez.
Oh, they
Go
really
on.
do. Arthur Chen, that Jeopardy champion that people love to hate,
Yeah.
was recently on the David Pakman show over Gamergate,
Saw
and
that.
he criticized David Pakman for. He actually said it would be more justifiable for David Pakman to invite a KKK member on his show to give his side of the story and explain why he's racist than it is to have people from Not Your Shield or Milo Yiannopoulos or anyone like that present the pro Gamergate side of things. That even allowing the other side to be heard. And David Pakman has asked me some very, very challenging questions. He isn't somebody who's just going to accept what a Yiannopoulos says to be the case, and he's definitely going to bring up things that Yiannopoulos has said in the past and say, do you still stand by that? What kind of person are you? That even allowing those hard questions to be asked of people on the opposing team is tantamount to harassing women and creating a toxic environment and legitimating what Chen sees as a indefensible position. And it just, this is what they want. They just want a bunch of people to agree and nod their heads and pat each other on the back and talk about how progressive they are and that they oppose these things that need to be opposed, and who's the best feminist? It's me. Yeah, that's all they want to do, and that's all he's ever done.
Yep.
Except for this one time, and what happens? He gets criticized for it.
Oh yeah. I mean, I've been watching all of the David Pakman interviews with all the people from Gamergate, and I think he's done a fair job, I think, so far. Or he's been, I would say, even in some ways, even fairer than the people on HuffPost Live, because they actually let folks come on and without trying to sort of bait and make it about misogyny as much.
And it's not just that. He asked Yiannopoulos difficult questions. Right, but he also asked Brianna Wu some difficult questions, and he basically accused Arthur Chen of moving the goalpost and engaging in all kinds of fallacies and really just playing dirty. Right.
Oh, yeah.
So he definitely he's been hard on both sides. He's like, for all that I disagree with his position on feminism. I don't resent any of the questions that he really asked. I resent not having enough time to fully explain my position, and I resent him interrupting a lot. But at the same time, I would never, ever go on a mainstream show and expect to not be asked those difficult questions and not be asked to defend my position. And feminists seem to feel like that is how things should be. But yeah, I just, Jian Ghomeshi is he's one of those radio show hosts that you don't have to think too much, and you would never, if you were somebody that he appreciated, you would never have to defend really anything that you've ever said or done on his show. He would avoid those things because he's an entertainer. He's not a journalist, right?
Mm. The entertaining thing about all this is, I've said it before, when the chips are down, when the moment they stop having a mutual enemy to fight, they start to eat their own. The social justice warriors. They just devour each other. All it takes is just that one little thing. So all the Adrian Chens and Phil Fishes and all these other people in Gamergate, all those folks, all these male feminists that are trying to white knight for like Zoe Quinn and Anita Sarkeesian and Brianna Wu and all those folks, all it takes is just this one little thing, and that it always seems to find a way. You know what I mean? Because they're always walking on eggshells. They just need to step slightly out of line, and they will just crucify them in the media.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, like you see it with William Frezza, and you see it with James Taranto. They tried desperately to get him fired from the Wall Street Journal for daring to say there's a double standard when it comes to drunk sex. That is a sexist double standard. You know, you have this sort of it's probably a very small number, and this is one of the things that Gamergate has shown me insofar as their ability to convince Intel and other large corporations to pull their advertising and pull their associations and relationships with certain websites. Sometimes all it takes is 150 angry letters to get an advertiser to rethink their relationship with a specific magazine, website, or whatever, right? And so if you have, all it takes is 150 rabid feminists to get a guy like Bill Frezza fired.
Yeah. And all it seems to take is about 11 women to completely destroy a progressive hero or whatever in the media.
Well,
but
I'm not prepared. I'm not prepared as as far as things have because that open letter was something that I wrote right at the very beginning when the story first broke.
Yeah.
And I have since changed my view a little bit as far as being willing to entertain. Here, I'm going to turn my camera on because I feel weird talking with no face.
It's okay. It's okay.
But it feels very, very strange to me that there are now so many people who've come forward, and that some of them have filed police reports finally, probably months.
After 11 years.
Months or years after the fact. And I don't think that anything really is going to come, anything substantive is going to come from those police reports being filed. There's no evidence anymore, right? There just isn't. And so this is really unfortunate because if he is what they say they are, if he has done the things that they say he did, they've not just screwed themselves over, they've screwed every other one of his victims over, haven't they?
Yeah, that's something I've never understood. I can understand how somebody would be quiet about like rape, but if somebody did what they're reporting here, as in just out of nowhere, just slapped you a couple of times in the face and then just started choking you, where you were really fearing for your life, that is not something you keep to yourself. That's something you tell like the nearest person, and then that person convinces you to put in a police report. That's not something that you stay silent about for 11 years, which is one of the things that is being alleged.
Oh yeah, no, this is one of the things that I think has been largely ignored in all of this, and I think it's been ignored because it is a criticism of women, or it would be seen as a criticism of women, is like, where is the discourse about social responsibility, the social responsibility of victims of sex crimes in particular, because we know that sex crimes are generally committed by recidivists. Where is there any kind of burden of social responsibility placed on victims to actually file a report?
Don't you know, Karen?
Even if one of these women had filed a report and nothing came of it, the next one who filed a report would be taken more seriously because there would already be a report from someone else. And this is really the thing. I think that each one of these women, and each one of them is in some way culpable for the fact that this man was, if he did these things, was walking free to victimize others. Like, where's the sisterhood in all of that? Like, I don't understand. Like, the sisterhood will gather in to protect victims, and protect them from any scrutiny and any challenge and any sort of cross-examination, right? And they'll do it by legislating, by legislating reform laws that disallow those things, right? But at the same time, they will not put an onus on other women to step up and do what it takes to protect other women from being victimized in the same way by the same person. And I think that's a real shame, because that is something that's just been completely missing in our entire discourse on sexual assault, is that victims, they don't just have a right to step forward and make a complaint. They really do have a responsibility to that person's future victims to do so.
Yeah, and that's the insanity of the situation, because I actually remember there was an article that says, I knew about Jian Ghomeshi, and I'm like, okay, you've heard about him in your social circles, you probably travel in the same circles, and you've heard whispers, and you heard whispers, and you said nothing. You didn't make a police report, you didn't do any of that stuff. Are you serious? You knew about this, you knew about the women, and how do you know about these things and then say nothing, that there were multiple victims and all this other stuff, and then finally you're like, oh, finally someone said, oh my God, how are you waiting? I don't understand. But I have to read this thing though, because we received an email about this.
Okay.
From someone we're going to call D. I have no idea if there is a radfem sex-negative angle to what is going on here. I do, however, find it interesting and very telling that the pinnacle of virtue in the progressive sphere, the CBC, is so quick to turn on one of its own because of bad optics. Or is it just bad optics? Canada famously dealt with the morality of what business the public has in the bedroom, i.e. none. 30 years ago, an ideal, most celebrated in, you guessed it, the CBC. Now, however we find out that it is important, and it will get you fired. So what was on the minds of the CBC execs when they decided to fire Jian? Let's play a hypothetical situation. Jian Ghomeshi instead had a sexual relationship with another man, with all of the same allegations made. Would the CBC act any differently? I think so. They'd probably be running a 12-part radio drama describing how brave Jian was to live the way he does, and to hell with the detractors. They'd probably try and link it all to a conservative smear campaign, but no. The allegations involve violence against a woman, and now one of the biggest names in Canadian progressive thought has been brought low. I think the progressive community prides itself on its principles of tolerance and social libertarianism. I say pride themselves on, not that they actually stand up and notice the totalitarian trends in their movement that tend towards following people into certain acceptable sets of behavior. This drive to be acceptable to the right people, the intolerance of any hearsay, or improper thought and action, they are the hallmarks of a religion, not an intellectual movement. It would be interesting if it is finally radical feminism that brings that trend out into the light, so everyone can finally see it for what it is. I am not a fan of Jian Ghomeshi, but to be fired over this is appalling. I hope him well in the future. All right, but yeah.
I would say that there's not a whole lot that doesn't make sense with that. There is this this trend in progressive circles to embrace every sexuality in existence other than straight male sexuality, especially if that straight male sexuality is dominant in any way.
Yep.
And this actually flies in the face of typical female psychology. You look at 50 Shades of Grey. There's a reason why that's one of the best-selling series of books of all time for female readership, right? And it's not men buying these books. It's women who are buying these books. Look at the sexual fantasies men and women enjoy. And they both enjoy fantasies of being dominated more than they enjoy fantasies of dominating others. And so, I mean, you just sort of look at that that sort of dynamic in general humanity, but the way progressives would like everything to be, which is sort of a Lacey Green style, ask permission at every stage, at least if one of you is a man, he needs to ask permission at every stage. And that it just, they really, it really is androphobia. Like, this is the only heteroandrophobia. They don't apply the same standards. They don't apply the same standards to gay men. They don't apply the same standards to a femdom relationship involving two lesbians. They just don't. Those things are permissible. Those things are, and as far as female sexuality goes, anything goes. Slut walks, and I should be able to express myself however I like, and I should be able to wear whatever I want and not have to deal with unwanted attention, and I should be able to put myself on display and have men stare at the sidewalk instead of me if I deem them unworthy. It really is, it's not an attack on sex, it's not even an attack on heterosexuality, it's an attack on heterosexual male sexuality.
Well, think about Lena Dunham. We were just talking about that in the last show, where she described some really, really creepy behavior, and she spoke about it in a sort of a light tone, like she's sort of happy, like she's not ashamed that what she did with her sister could be considered predatory. And what they blamed when they heard that they found it predatory and not just endearing was they blamed heteronormativity. That this was just people being bigoted against different sexuality. It's just so ridiculous to think about it.
It is. You know, like there is an argument to be made that pedophilia should be characterized as a sexual orientation. Not that it should be allowed, or that it should not be decriminalized, but that it should be categorized not as a like a mental illness or a mental disorder, but as a sexual orientation.
I think though. And I say that because you find out that a lot of pedophiles, it's not always a sexual orientation for them. I would say absolutely for some people, but for others it can be that there are some people who are also in relationships with, you know, women their own age, things like that. But
there are exclusive pedophiles and non-exclusive pedophiles, and people who are only attracted to children and people who are attracted to children in addition to adults, right? But this would be no different from saying a bisexual is attracted to both men and women, you know, as opposed to someone who's gay or someone who's lesbian. I think that removing some of the hysteria around it would actually allow many pedophiles to seek treatment, you know, even if it's just aversion therapy or something like that, to keep them from offending. I think I've seen interviews with enough pedophiles who are very sort of, they lament their situation, and they lament it because they will go through their entire lives without ever indulging in what seems to be their own sexual orientation. They will never do that because they understand how much it would harm a child. They understand on a conscious level that it's wrong, even if it's what they feel. And I think that those people would be vastly helped from removing some of the hyper rhetoric, the extremely hysterical rhetoric around pedophilia, and classifying it in a different way than we currently do. There's got to be something about, you know, being somebody who's trying to approach a therapist and saying, I'm having these feelings, and always being in fear of being turned in to the police, that will keep them from disclosing and getting the help they need, right? So there is that, and there is an argument to be made for that, and there's also an argument to be made for someone who's 7 years old should not be held responsible, at least not criminally, for what they did when they were 7. But at the same time, her attitude toward it is completely unapologetic. It's completely like, I did nothing wrong, and there was nothing wrong with this, and
It's almost a fondness. She almost talks about it like, oh, those were the good old days
yeah,
when I was masturbating besides my kid's sister who was in the bed beside me,
yeah, no,
figuring some stuff out.
it's just bizarre. I mean, like, I've shared a bed with my sister, and it was, I mean, you talk about stuff, and then you go to sleep. That you might cuddle a little, right? You know, you just might sort of share your body heat. Other than
Yeah.
that, I mean, it's just like, who would
It was
think?
really obsessive, though. The way she was talking about it, it was like it was beyond, caring and loving your sister. It was like this obsession, sort of wanting her affection in a weird, obsessive way.
Well,
Just,
I think we all have. Like, it's bizarre. It's bizarre to me that a kid that young would be having those kinds of thoughts, those kinds of sexual thoughts. Um, I do know a friend of mine, her son, when he was 5, and in kindergarten, there was a girl in his class. It was a grade one kindergarten split class, and the girl was in grade 1, and she cornered him in the bathroom. She actually went into the boys' room and cornered him in there and demanded that he take down his pants and demanded that he allow her to touch him. And some of the things that he apparently said to him that he reported to his mother would indicate that she's either been exposed to sexual abuse, or she has a father or a stepfather or a mother who watches porn in her presence. And like, these are, and then she spent most of her time, this grade 1 girl, blaming her younger sister for all of this. Oh, I did it because she told me to.
oh wow.
Yeah, no, like, and there's room to say, well, this girl, there's got to be something in her life that isn't right. For a kid that age, 7 years old, to do this to not just one boy but several boys, and a couple of girls in the school. There's got to be something wrong there at home. There's got to be something wrong somewhere.
Yeah.
But there's a responsibility that you have to protect other children from this, and to prevent other children from being damaged by whatever kind of fallout from whatever kind of incident or incidents this girl is going through.
I had a similar situation when I was younger, actually. I got moved from classes because of the incident. So I had to uproot, and then I lost all of my friends in moving to the next class because it was this big thing that was involved, because they didn't know how to handle the situation at all.
Oh yeah, they don't. I mean, it's difficult. It's a difficult situation because on the one hand, it's a child, and the child is not responsible in the same way an adult would be. And you generally would think that that child has been through something that would lead them to behave in that way. It's not like with adults where you look at the actions only. You try and look at the causes and try to make allowances for that, and try to go more in a rehabilitation type thing than a punitive thing. But I mean, when push comes to shove, other children do need to be protected from another child who's going to do that.
Yeah. But getting back to Jian Ghomeshi, the situation with BDSM, I think both of us are at least familiar enough with BDSM to.
Look at that! No, that's. I hurt myself ripping apart my walls. Sorry.
I think both of us are at least familiar enough to understand what he's talking about. But
Yeah.
yes, you do get involved with those conversations, and But the thing is that Jian Ghomeshi was describing the fact that he actually did sort of check in at different times to make sure that they were okay and stuff like that. I mean, it's hard to, I mean, it's difficult to determine who's telling the truth in all this. I'm really on the fence, to be honest, because I don't think that I have enough information on either side to really, I mean, they say that there's some kind of video evidence or audio evidence or pictures or something that they've seen that we have not, of course, because, you know, you can't place them on television and wouldn't show us that evidence anyway. But I really want to know what this evidence is. Allison?
There's allegedly video evidence of some sort.
Allegedly, yes, allegedly. They said
he said that there was video evidence of himself and his ex-girlfriend that he showed to the CBC executives as proof that there was consent. And the executives did not take his word for it. However, knowing what I know about how people would maybe judge some of the things that I've done with my boyfriend, if they were only looking at the actual act, the actual, you know, what was going on physically, rather than mentally and before and after, that I know that there's probably a tendency to reject even what would be, in my mind, to be substantive evidence that this was consensual. I know that there are a lot of people that would not consent to things that I have consented to, or things that I have asked for, and you know, so like it really is, if you look at it, because people who indulge, not so much who indulge in the domination aspects of things, but the sort of the submissive, masochistic aspect of things, because they are such a small minority, the ones who go to the extremes. I think there is this tendency of people, especially when that person is a woman, to be overprotective and to assume that no woman in her right mind could possibly agree to being treated that way. And, you know, not even not agree, but, you know, like just what woman would want to do that? What woman would enjoy?
I can only imagine what people are saying in the comments right now.
Yeah, I don't know.
Allison, you want to check that for us? Are you still there?
Yeah, they're requesting more Rachel erotic fan fiction in Gilbert Godfrey voice.
Oh gosh.
You'll never live it down, you know. This is gonna re-emerge from the depths periodically. Eventually, you're gonna have to do it, Karen.
Maybe
you're gonna have to do it.
Maybe I should recite some of my own erotica, because you know I am a published.
Yeah, they want more of it. She's. Yeah, she does have her erotica, doesn't she? Oh look, I found my handcuffs.
Your witch?
Okay, all right. This is
my handcuffs.
I can't believe it.
They're not padded. Tell me they're not padded, because padding is
the depth.
Oh come on! I can't show people my handcuffs.
You can. I almost broke my nose once during sex, so. Bam.
These aren't the best handcuffs, but
actually, that somebody raises a good point in the chat. Someone raises a good point in the chat. Like, if you look at 50 Shades of Grey, and then they still won't believe that that this is stuff that women would consent to, like this kind of aggressive sexual behavior from a guy.
Oh, I think it's completely a male idealization of female sexuality. I think that men, for the most part, they might be willing to accept that there is a woman or a few women out there who like a little bit of the spanky, a little bit of the slap my face until it, you know, my cheeks red, pull my hair, smoosh my face into the pillow, those kinds of things, right? Like that. that there might be a woman or a few women out there who like, but not their daughters and not their mothers and certainly not their wives. And if their wives want it, their wives only want it with them, not with anybody else. Like, it's not like any other guy who did those things would turn them on, because it's different, right? That I think that in large part this is about men not wanting to see women for what they are, and women can be dirty and nasty and just absolutely filthy and like really, really fucked up shit. Women can do that. Women can be
There's so many people who are letting their imaginations run wild right now, thinking about what you mean.
Oh, they don't want to know.
Yeah. By the way, there's a reason why I'm called the naughty nerdist and not the nice nerdist. Okay. Jesus, what do they think I meant?
There you go.
Yeah.
Did I leave the twist tie off the bread?
If you leave the if you need evidence of the perfidy of female sexuality, I invite you to go to Y Gallery.
My gallery? What is that?
Yeah. You have not heard of Y Gallery.
It's ringing a little minor bell in my head.
The only rules is that it just has to the erotica just has to involve men. Like there can't be any women, because they're the het is equal. But really, and by men I mean anything with a penis, really. It's really, like, I think that's the only place I've ever seen. And the problem is that if you're going to go there, bring a bucket, because I think that's the only thing place I've ever seen.
Okay, wait. What am I going to need the bucket for? What am I going to need the bucket for? Am I going to for vomiting or for?
Well, maybe not you, Rachel. Maybe not you, but other people might. So I just thought
for catching fluids.
You know what? I will say that One Gallery is the only place I have ever seen cannibal, necrophilia, pedophilia all in one goddamn image.
I've probably run across this before, actually.
Yeah, I'd never want to again. Like, I'm done. I had to quit the internet for a while after that one.
Wait, was it? I'm hoping it was illustrated.
Yes, it was illustrated. Yeah, it was.
There's no way that you would get away with that otherwise.
No, there's this. Yeah, this was. Okay, I gotta recover from even saying that. So.
Yeah, because
honestly, I've read enough male fiction written by women to know that. And here's the thing, too, right? Is that there is something about a lot of women that want to see a man on his knees, right? But they don't want to see a man on his knees for a woman, and that's where male BDSM comes in. When you look at the genres of erotic fiction that sell the best. They tend to go two guys and, straight, right? And then with a male dominant and female submissive, and then there's like two guys and one woman, and then there's a guy and a guy, and one is very dominant and one is very submissive, and then there's and way at the bottom, even after two women together, one of them dominant and submissive, you'll find the male submissive, female dominant paradigm. That is the one that sells the least well to women. It has to absolutely be beautifully written in order for it to get any kind of traction anywhere in any market of female readership.
The guys seem to be the ones who are more fans of that one, at least from my experience.
They want to see it. They like the mainstream audience. You would think a mainstream audience wouldn't necessarily of women would not necessarily be interested in seeing, reading about two guys having sex. They are less interested in a female dominant and a male submissive than they are in that. And so, I mean, you sort of look at that, not just what women like, but what women absolutely do not like. And you look at 50 Shades of Grey, you look at all of those things, and what's Jian Ghomeshi's biggest crime may actually be that he refused to do a Mr. Gray, Adrian Gray, I think his name is, and actually claim one of those women for his own, the first one he came across.
We don't even know that he's just a straight dom. He could just be a switch and a dom. We don't know.
He could be a rapist for all we know. I mean, maybe he is.
For all we know, I don't know. I really don't.
But it could very well be just that his crime was that he never wanted a long-term relationship with any of these women. That could be the main thing. Like, these women may have been perfectly, in retrospect, and I have seen this dynamic played out so often in romance novels, where at least the ones written in the 80s and the early 90s, often start out with a genuine rape, not just a rape.
Oh, the bodice rippers. Oh, yeah, I read some of those.
Yeah, not just a dominant submissive thing, not just a questionable consent thing, not even a she consented in her own brain.
It started out as rape, and then slowly but surely she falls in love with her rapist.
What it is he actually brutally rapes her, and by the end of the book, he has proved to her, if you knew me then the way you know me now, you would have consented. And it's sort of like, how we talk about retroactive rape.
It's so weird.
Retroactive consent. And so, I mean, like, it's just the most bizarre, like, human sexuality is so ambiguous. It is so murky and muddy that when you look at these things and you think, well, if there was one woman among these 11 people that he had decided, I'm going to commit to you and I'm going to marry you and you're going to share this extremely glamorous, highfalutin life with me, and you're going to be on my arm when I go to these gala events and and when I go to the Grammys and and all of these things, right, or the Junos or whatever they call it in Canada, you're going to be on my arm on the red carpet, right, and I'm going to put you up in this lavish home, and I'm gonna, and we're gonna, if she would be standing behind him saying he did absolutely nothing wrong, right?
Yep.
He did nothing wrong to me. He did nothing wrong to any other woman. Like this is just one of the most bizarre things about human sexuality and female sexuality is the sort of ability to renegotiate reality. To conform to what we want. So if we decide a month later that, yeah, we would have consented, then we did. And if we decide a month later that we wouldn't have consented, well, then we didn't.
That's not a way to write a system of law.
It really isn't.
No, it is not. It's so weird. Oh, God, there's so many odd things about this.
Ultimately, in the Jian Ghomeshi case, you can't. This is my opinion about the whole thing. It needs to go to trial, and everybody else needs to just shut up and wait till something.
Pretty much.
You mean after? I don't see the purpose in vulturing around this issue, in like opening up the carcass's entrails and looking at all the crap inside. It just let the process of justice, process, I guess, go forth.
But I don't know that there will be a trial, because as far as I can tell, all of these claims are old enough that there's no physical evidence.
Mm-hmm. So essentially,
frankly, if he had video evidence of a even if that's accessible to the police, that would make it look non-consensual in the moment, right? And frankly, rape role play would look non-consensual in the moment. If there are or following text messages or communications that would indicate that that was consensual, if that's the only piece of solid evidence that exists, if like you said, that exonerated him, then there's no case. There's no case to be made in a court of law. And that's the really sad thing, as I said before, that if you feel you were violated, if you feel you were wronged, that crime was committed against you, you don't just owe it to yourself to go and report that. You owe it immediately. You owe it to all of his other potential victims, right? So.
Yeah. Well, and now we have a situation where probably we'll never figure out what exactly happened. If Jian is innocent, which is possible.
Yeah, it's totally possible that he's innocent. It's also totally possible that he is the monster that they say he is.
Yeah, but the reality is that it's a situation where you can never really find out what's happening, what happened. It's just.
I think the one thing that is actually making me lean towards, well, I'm not leaning towards either side, but making me really, really consider the side of these victims being honest, or these alleged victims being honest, would be the fact that he is such a feminist panderer, that he is so progressive, and outwardly so progressive, and so pandering to feminism, and so willing to buy their line. Because I don't know whether I've said this, in public, but if I were a rapist, if I were somebody who, preys on women sexually, I would not want to hang out with anyone but feminists. I would not want to hang out with anyone but people who talk nonstop about rape and how terrorized they feel by masculinity and how endangered they feel all the time and vulnerable, and how they how it would be it's so impossible for me to report because it's so difficult for women to come forward, and literally I would be listening to all of that and I would be jerking off every freaking time, right? Because
holy shit!
Well, I'm gonna interrupt you. I agree with Karen.
I know, but it's just she's right.
How big a turn on would that be for a sexual predator to be surrounded by prey that act like prey 24/7?
Yeah,
right?
and actually,
not only act like prey, and act like they're vulnerable and they could never stand up to a man because, oh my God, men are so terrifying, they're so dangerous, right? But that, oh my goodness, I would never report you because, it's just too difficult, it's too shameful, and no one would believe me anyway, right? I mean, this is a dream come true for a male sexual predator, this community of women. Most of them emotionally damaged, I can guarantee you that, or personality disordered in some way or another. And, so, I mean, you look at that and you have this crowd of vulnerable women, right, who talk nothing more frequently than they talk about sexual violation, right, and about how difficult it is for women to come forward and report, and how few rapists ever spend a night in prison, right? And all of those things, and that's the pool of victims I would want.
Oh wow!
Right? Absolutely. And you see it again and again with Hugo Schweitzer, with Kyle Payne, with a whole bunch of male feminists that have sort of been exposed as maybe not being sexual predators per se, but being creepy and sort of exploiting their position as male feminists in order to get opportunities. And
Mary Koss would say they're using authority, coercion by authority. So they are, in that sense, they are predatory. And I totally agree with you, Karen. I think that would be a thrilling social landscape for a male sexual predator, to have such an inflated sense of potential aggression and violence, and how absolutely horrible it was, and how the women in this community, they're constantly told that they can't report. They can never go to the police because the police will never take them seriously.
Not just that either, right? For somebody who is a dominant sexual persona, right? To hear all the time about how men are privileged, men are powerful, men are dominant, men are in charge, and how women are expected to be subordinate and submissive, and all, like the entire, all of the rhetoric just plays into every sexual fantasy a man like that would have. And, you know, so I mean, you look at it and you think, well, of course, a man like that would be attracted to, like, would want to hang out with feminists 24/7, who, like, they fit the bill. They're his type, right? Like,
Yeah.
it just, so I mean, like, there's that.
That's why he. Maybe that's why he
This
took
whole
gender
thing,
studies and stuff.
this whole thing is making me say to myself, well, you know, maybe there is something to all of this, simply because of the sort of the pool of victims. Because I don't think that there are any conservative women that are alleging he violated them. I think that because he hangs out in progressive circles, he hangs out in feminist circles.
That also makes him very easy for him to get for him to get accused of a whole bunch of stuff, because they know that anybody who has those kinds of claims lobbied against them are not going to be able to say anything in those same circles. They're going to accept it. They're going to listen and believe.
Well,
So,
actually, there is some protection, I think, for progressive and feminist men against accusations of sexual.
I don't know about that.
Oh no, they're look at the situation with Clinton.
What about Max Temkin, though? He is one of the co-creators of Cards Against Humanity, and this woman who he never even slept with, if I recall, I think he just kissed her. She came out years later saying that he raped her and stuff like that, and there was no evidence whatsoever to. And he came out and he said, listen, this is a complete and utter lie. And then other people convinced him to not only be incredibly apologetic while saying that he totally didn't rape her, but that he needed to you know, calm that rhetoric down and not be as upset, even though he was falsely accused of rape and had his name dragged through the mud. It's, I don't know.
Well,
what about Clymer, though? He didn't even rape anybody, and he was having sex with feminists, and he was using his position to pick up women, and he was pretty much crucified.
yes, but he was not a high-status male either, right? Someone like Jian Ghomeshi, I saw so many people, so many women saying, you know, I just adore you, and I don't believe any of these allegations, right? I refuse to believe it of you. And so, I mean, and the battle lines sort of were drawn, where essentially people who liked his show, people who really liked him as a host and a personality, were standing behind him, and people who did not like his politics and did not like blah 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 were not. And there were very few people in the beginning like me who were just like, you know what, this is bullshit. Anonymous allegations of sexual misconduct in the mainstream media rather than to the police. That's bullshit. And let's hope that all the evidence sees the light of day, right? There were very few people taking a middle approach where they were not going to stand behind one side or the other, and there were a lot of people who were backing him up, at least initially. And what drives me crazy too, like, because you do open yourself up to allegations, of course, but look how many people were had to come forward, right, before other people came forward, right? You have this situation where it only takes one allegation, right? But if 11 times minimum something like this happens before the first allegation, I mean, like, you would have to have a sense of sort of megalomania about that, of being invulnerable to that kind of thing. you know, like just knowing how when feminists say 90% of women never report it or 80% of women never report what happened to them, right? You know, it's a numbers game too, right? And he's an egotistical man, I can tell you that much just listening to him. He's awfully full of himself. And it could very well be that he was just, you know, of course nobody's going to report me because these are people who aren't going to report. And then if somebody does, well, I'll just be able to shrug it off because I'm Jian Ghomeshi.
Can I point something out? If women are so afraid of reporting sexual assault or abuse, because of the attention, the negative attention they'd supposedly get, why would they fail to report it when there's almost no attention on it, namely when it happened, and report it now when there's a media circus?
Yeah.
This is really the thing. It's basically, I think, because one person came forward and is willing to say this fucked up shit happened to me. That maybe other people are like, okay, yeah, me too. I think there is something to be said for that. That a lot of that is just sincere. This person came forward and didn't have to give her name and didn't have to, you know, be subject to a whole bunch of nasty stuff. That, you know, I'm willing to do that now too. But at the same time, one would think that actually filing a police report would be both easier and more effective.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, but also nasty stuff. Like, you mean the process of finding? I'm not saying you, Karen, because I know you probably use that sarcastically. But the process of trying to determine guilt or innocence is, and that's really what feminists seem to have a problem with, is that that process is not comfortable for the victim. But the reality is the alternative is to give women the ability to simply charge men with rape and they no pass go. They just go directly to jail, no trial, nothing of discomfort to her, and they have no conception of what kind of hideous society that would create. That would be infinitely worse than a society in which men are capable of, or people are capable of raping each one. It'd be infinitely worse than what we have today, essentially.
Oh yeah, of course. I mean, like, this is the thing, is and this is why these alleged victims get let off the hook by the sisterhood, even though their inaction endangered other women and caused other women to be victims. Because anything that's uncomfortable for a given woman is she should not be expected to deal with that. And you know, it doesn't matter how many other people are hurt by her inaction. You know, she's vulnerable. She's a victim, so she gets a free pass. And I think that's actually, it not only does a disservice to other women, it really does a disservice to the women who are victimized, to treat them as if they're so broken and so fragile and so destroyed and so incapable that they would not be able to report what happened to them and not be able to engage the proper channels.
Yeah.
Well, I looks like we've passed the 60-minute mark, and we probably should wrap this up. Thank you everybody for coming in to watch us shoot the shit, and
About Jian Ghomeshi.
yeah, Jian Ghomeshi, you probably don't even know about unless you're in Canada.
Oh, he was syndicated like to 180 different radio stations, something like that.
Really? Wow.
North America, and he was popular. He was the most probably the most notable CBC personality out there, the most popular. So, you know, it really is. It's a big deal, not just for Canada, but you know, Sirius Satellite, NPR, all of these other stations that carried his show. And I know that they're having a hard time, the producers of his show are having a hard time carrying on with hosts, temporary hosts like Pia Chattopadhyay and other people like that. So the show won't survive without him. He was as statistical and smarmy and repugnant as I found he was. He certainly had an appeal to the general public that probably
Won't be replicated.
replaceable. So.
Well, goodbye, everybody.
Hit the big red button, Karen.
All right, click in the.
Bye, everybody.
Bye, everybody.
Bye bye.